In this video, I'm going to talk about how to back up network devices from a CSV file using Pandas, netmiko, datetime, and classes. All right, so I got steps here. Step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So the first step, this is where we import required modules. So we are importing Pandas, netmiko, datetime. And step 2 is this is where we define the base class or the parent class called NetworkDevice. So we have the init function, and this is where we pass the hostname, username, password, and we have the function backup config. And in this case, this is just a placeholder that we can override. This is actually just a optional in this case. And we also have this method __str__. And this basically just a label of the object. And here in this case, we are just printing the class name, host name. So like I said, it's just a label of the object itself. Okay, and step 3 is this where we are defining the CiscoDevice class, and we are using Telnet in this case. So we are defining the init method, and we are defining the backup config method. So of course, in the backup method, backup_config method, this is where we connect to the devices, right? And we define the timestamp, file name, and we open the file name as file, and we write the output of the show version in this case. So we are not using show run config or startup config because I think it was too long. The config was too long. So in this case, I'm just using show version. Show configuration will work as well, or show running config. Actually, the reason why I'm not using show running config is because it's not that command is not supported in this router, the route server that I'm using from the internet. So I'm using the show version command. Okay, but for the purposes of, in real world, you can just, if you're using a real device, you can just replace this with show run config or show startup config. Okay. And then step 4 is this is where we are defining the Juniper device class. So here we are also using Telnet. And here we are defining the init method. And by the way, we are using this inheritance. So we are inheriting this network device, which is the parent device, this one, or the base class. And we are using it to define the host name, or calling it to define the host name, username, and password. And of course, we're also using this method. Okay, and same scenario. We also have backup config, and we are sending the show BGP summary command. We disconnect from the device, and we define the timestamp, and we define the file name, which we open here with the write mode, and we write the output from the show BGP summary command. Okay, and we are just printing this to show that the backup is successful or saved to the file name or to the file. All right, and step 5 is this is where we read devices from the CSV file using Pandas. So here we are defining a empty list, and this is where we read the CSV file and load it into the data frame. So this here is a data frame, and we we are defining a for loop. So just to explain this a bit, this underscore, we are using underscore here because we're not using the index in this case. This would be the index. And row, so notice the syntax, right? Underscore, comma, space, row, in df, which is the data frame, dot iterows, which is a method that returns the index and the row, right? That's why we are using this. So if the device type is Cisco, iOS, Telnet, we call the CiscoDevice class, and we basically save this, all this expression into a variable called device, which is also a object. And if the device type is Juniper Unus Telnet, we run this, we call the Juniper class, and we save the result of this expression into a variable called device, which is also again called object. Okay. And of course, if the first statement is true, all of the other statements, elif and else statements, will be skipped. And the next action that Python will do is actually just append the device object into the devices list, which is what was defined here as an empty list. Okay, and it will do the same for the Juniper device. Skip the else statement. If if the first if statement is false, it will run the elif, which is the Juniper device, and then append the object into the device list. In step 6, this is how you actually perform the actual backup, or yeah. So because here we are using the devices list, right? And this is a variable. So devices list is a list of objects. And yeah, we can verify that by adding a print statement here if you want, right? And then of course, for each object, we run, or we call, the backup method. So let me go ahead and run this code and see what happens. Okay, so we have this and we have this. So this is the list. Let me find it. Okay, let me remove this first. Okay, it was successful, right? So backing up. So this is the class name, which is what we are doing here. So this is because we are seeing this output here because of this method that we defined here under the parent class. So the class name and the host name. Okay, and of course for CiscoDevice, let me go to the Cisco class. This is the print statement that we see here. Okay, and same for Juniper. This is Juniper device, and this is the print statement that we see under the backup config method, which is this. Okay, and I added this print statement to show you the content of this devices list before we run step 6. Okay, let me go ahead and run the code again. So this is the contents of the devices list. So we can see that it's a list of objects. So this is the Juniper. Let me just go to the Juniper device. This is the output of show BGP summary, and this is the output of show version. All right, so that's how you can back up network devices or send commands to network devices from a CSV file using pandas and classes. All right, so hopefully you found this video useful. If you have, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.